Welcome to Georgia Estate Law Explained.
Welcome to the show. We're here to bring clarity to estate and family law in Georgia. I'm Zofia Morales, and I'm here with attorney Stephen Scriber, founder of Scriber Law Group. Each episode, Stephen breaks down the legal issues that matter to most families, protecting your legacy to planning life's transitions. If you've ever wondered where to start or how to make the right legal choices for your family, you're in the right place. Welcome, Stephen. I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
Awesome. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So today we're discussing estate planning basics. So let's start there. What exactly is estate planning and why is it important for everybody at all income levels and not just rich people?
Oh, yeah. So estate planning is essentially the legal process for making sure that your assets are protected. So that both applies during your lifetime if you're ever incapacitated, unable to manage your affairs, and also after your lifetime to make sure that your things are distributed according to your wishes and with whatever restrictions that you would like. So it kind of takes into account a lot of things, like some people have asset protection issues to make sure that your home, other assets are protected from creditors, even Medicaid if one is in a nursing home, to minimize the payment of taxes, particularly estate taxes, to make sure that if you ever are incapacitated, like not just medically, unable to medically manage your affairs, that you have your wishes in place for that, and also to make sure that your money assets are protected while you're incapacitated. And also just to make sure that any of your personal wishes are honored, any legacy you want to leave behind gets honored, and that everyone, your friends, family, whoever is a relevant party knows what you want.
Exactly. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned incapacity because I know when my dad was doing his estate planning, his plan was I'm living at home until I keel over and then here's where it goes. And that's not how that played out.
Oh,
I was his caretaker for the last 3 years of his life. And so now we're struggling with how do we protect what he wants to give away, but still get him the support that he needs around Medicaid and nursing home care and that sort of thing.
oh
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's a huge decisions to make. And a lot of that, if the earlier you can facilitate those plans, the easier it
The
is to do it.
better. Yeah.
Unfortunately, people have like a bias towards thinking they have more time, and then
Yeah. Well, and one thing I discovered as I went through that is if you wait too long to make these decisions, Medicare, Medicaid is like, nope, you're trying to hide shit from
nope,
us.
you
And
have a
so
5 year look
we're
back.
going to
Yeah.
scratch all that off, right?
Oh yeah, it could be a bear, and yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are like the core documents that make up an actual estate plan? What are we talking about here? Does it go beyond a will?
So the most basic estate plan, at least as far as working with an attorney, anyway, is going to likely consist of a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive. And that's the name of it in Georgia and other states. They go by different names like living wills, healthcare powers of attorney, stuff like that. But at the most basic level, you want a document that says what happens to my estate after my death, what happens to my assets if I'm incapacitated, and what happens to my healthcare decisions if I'm incapacitated. Having said that, though, that's the baseline. If people didn't, and also if you have kids under the age of 18, what would happen to them if both their legal parents were to die before they turned 18? So
Yeah.
that's like our baseline. Most people would want to add on to that. So they want to make sure they have, if they do have kids that under 18, they have guardian designations in place, that if they have assets, they may want to consider, they would likely want to consider a revocable living trust at a minimum. And that both avoids probate for that asset, allows for longer term planning on that asset, has incapacity protections, and also if you have kids under 18, 25, it allows you to be more granular in how they receive that asset. And then there's
Right.
also people who have elder care issues, that want to do Medicaid planning, that maybe veterans planning. There's a lot of like niches as well that you'd want to work with to kind of round out your plan. And then
Yeah.
finally, there's beneficiary designations for insurance policies, bank accounts, um, in many states for pieces of real property that you can use to directly transfer assets to people after one's death, and that, well, not technically part of the estate plan, definitely informs how things get distributed and who's in charge and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I guess there's like the plan, what's in the binder, and then there's all of the stuff that kind of sits around that plan that kind of needs to be in line with what's in the binder, right?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. If there's like an incongruent, one thing would prevail over the other, and if document A says this and document B says that, a person, it creates a little bit of chaos if there's a misalignment, and then one of those two would obviously get followed. Like, let's say for an insurance policy, for example, if the will says I want my life insurance to go to Betty, and then the life insurance policy designation says actually Joe's the beneficiary, Joe would likely claim that life insurance policy, and Betty would be very confused and potentially upset.
Right.
So you want those things to sync up so that everyone's on the same page, and hopefully no one has to go to court to clarify any ambiguities.
Yeah, I was going to say, generally, when people are surprised and upset, lawyers tend to get involved beyond what you had intended.
Yep, I've been doing probate litigation for almost 15 years now. I no longer do it. I'll do almost exclusively estate planning because of that kind of dynamic.
Mm,
Try to prevent it and not fix it.
clean up the mess. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, at what point should someone start thinking about estate planning? Is this something you should do when you're 25? Is this something that, well, after you have the kid?
As a general rule, I would say as soon as possible. So, like when you're 18, it may be very simple. You may just fill out like a healthcare directive to make sure that if you get sick, that your parents can talk to the doctor if you're in college, for example. But over time, as soon as you have any assets, you would certainly want to consider a will, your beneficiary designations. Um, if you when you get married, you almost certainly want to have a will in place. Ideally, a prenup, but that's me being cynical, not whatever. Me being cynical. I'm not Lawyers are not known for their romance.
Yeah.
And then adding on additional things, but making sure at least your will, power of attorney, health directive are in place. And as you get older and things change, you want to keep building onto it. So
Yeah.
I would say start as soon as possible. But your plan is definitely going to be a lot different at 18 than it is at 58.
Yeah. And I have to say, my whole attitude toward prenups has evolved. I guess being part of a larger blended family late in life kind of evolved my opinion around a prenup.
I think it's actually a little bit romantic in a sense, and that to be like, I respect you enough to have this awkward conversation, and then narrow these things out so that we never have to argue about this ever again. We were all on the same page now.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And there are no unspoken assumptions. I think that's a
exactly,
beautiful thing.
and that's true with estate planning too. Talk about it. Yeah, we'll get into that more probably a little bit later, but
Well, that
a
was
good
actually the
25
next
secret
thing I
one.
was going to bring up.
Yeah.
That was the next thing. So, how does an estate plan help to minimize family conflict when someone dies, whether it's expected or unexpected?
Oh yeah. So first of all, it creates more clarity. So a properly executed estate plan, we now know exactly what the person wanted. So even if everyone assumed something, what is in paper would prevail, at least under Georgia law. I don't think any state really recognizes like video or phone calls or other types of things where
Mm,
someone says what they wanted. Um,
right.
but the written documents will be like he put it in writing, he signed it in front of two witnesses, assuming that the person was of sound mind and all that other song and dance as far as the formalities. If an attorney prepared it, it almost certainly is fine legally.
Right.
Um, but it creates that clarity so that everyone knows what to do next. And I think a lot of times when my dad was sick, I was like, "Oh, what does he want?" It's like he has it written on paper. I was like, "Oh, thank goodness." It'd be
Yeah.
ironic if he didn't have it, but at least he had
Yeah.
it written down. So that I was like, "Okay, we know what he wants now. I can just check mark it and go through it." So a lot of people are on autopilot, and having that
Yes.
direction in autopilot is very, very helpful.
Oh, yeah, I can attest having walked through this with a great deal of what I would call grief brain.
Oh yeah,
It's so helpful to have that. Okay, here's what I want under the following conditions, things laid out, especially around the health stuff, because I'm one of these people that if I love you, I'm going to put in all possible effort to get you the best possible recovery that I can get you. And if that's not what you want,
yeah.
and you haven't written it out, that's what's gonna happen, right?
Exactly. But especially with medical, I mean, doctors obviously want to keep you alive, so they're not going to disconnect treatment unless they are
There's
sure.
instructions,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And so it helps lift a lot of guilt, potential guilt or confusion from those situations. Like, okay, he does not want to receive heroic care. She does not want to receive ventilation, but does want to receive fluid. It's like these kind of things can be clarified so that everyone knows how to proceed accordingly.
Yeah, and
Different stuff like you're like a piece of there's a jewelry collection. It's like I know a lot of things. A lot of estate disputes are low. I call it disputes, not like things that go fully to court, but things that end up creating like awkward conversations. Like mom
mhm.
had two rings. Which ring goes to
Which
daughter one?
daughter?
Which ring
Yeah,
goes to daughter two? If mom knows that like, hey, ruby ring goes to this one, diamond ring goes to this one, everyone's like, okay, at least we know. So
yeah,
they may not like it, but at least you're clear.
exactly. Well, and I think the other thing that's good in the planning process is to engage people as you're going through it and say, "Hey, do you have a strong opinion?"
Yes, yes, and
Or if you don't want input to say, I have made this decision, and they can kind of get it out of their system now instead of, it being
exactly.
a surprise.
One thing we always want to ask clients is like, what's your family like? Is there a person who we think will be um upset at this decision or needs to be told why? Like if
Yeah.
let's say like you have two kids, one is a millionaire and one's a school teacher. So you leave like 80% of your estate to the school teacher and 20% to your millionaire. And you want to that while it might rationally make sense to the parent, you want to
Right.
have that talk with your children so you don't to explain the rationale, even though it might be obvious at one level, to make sure that the one who's receiving the 20% doesn't think that's an allocation of their affection, as
Right.
opposed to uh we think she just needed that more than you did, so that's why, but we regard you the same. So those
Yeah,
kind of things are we want to clarify before feelings get hurt.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dig in a little bit on some common myths and misunderstanding about estate planning.
I think the most fundamental one is that I guess there's two fundamental ones. Sorry, one is for the wealthy or is for people that have a lot of things.
Yeah, rich
It,
people.
it's sort of rich people thing, and while that is probably true for the higher the wealth, the more complex it gets. Like if you have to pay an estate tax, and Georgia does not charge an estate tax, so it's only federal estate taxes. So if you have like I don't know what I'll make this timeless. Right now, the exclusion is well over 13 million. So most people
Yeah.
don't have 13 million. If you do have 13 million, you certainly should seek counsel immediately for it. But in some ways, a small pie is more important to strategically divide than a bigger pie. If you have
Yeah.
$10 million is easier to split up than $100,000. So you want to be mindful about on that level. But also, um, if we're at if you're not wealthy, you also want to make considerations for who's dependent on you. For is
Mm.
a spouse dependent on you? Was a child dependent on you? Do you have an adult child who's dependent on you for various reasons? So you want to address those things.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that people always think they have more time, and this is just a presentist bias that
Yeah.
estate planning is not often urgent for most people until it's really urgent. And then it's often too late to get a lot of the strategic goals of estate planning done. So,
Yeah. I had a buddy who
yeah.
it became like really front and center for him when his company sent him to Rwanda, and they
Oh,
had this whole big presentation on landmines and the awareness of landmines in the area. And he's like, okay, maybe it's time for some life insurance.
yes.
And
Hey, don't tell
yeah,
them no Rwanda. They may be concerned.
yes,
If you're going to a
exactly.
place with
You
landmine.
probably should have done that before this assignment, but now beats never. So,
Exactly. So those kind of things. So if you wait, I mean, obviously, if someone gets sick with a terminal illness or anything like that, as long as you're of sound mind, you definitely should do estate planning. But you're best served by it when you do stuff like that way earlier, or at least
yeah.
start the ball rolling, so you're not doing it with like a gun to your head.
Yeah,
Um,
and a really
yeah.
short countdown clock,
Yes.
right?
You could think way more clearly. And then also, unfortunately, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I'm 40 now. I've had clients younger than me deal with probate stuff. So I've had clients like, granted, like 100 something deal with probate issues. So you never know quite how long you'll live. So you want to kind of assume for the purpose of this that you don't have that much time. So once you get it done with, you can now just maintain it instead of
Yes.
knowing that and also just the relief of having it done is really important.
You
Just be
know,
like, okay, it's fine.
it
I can always tweak it next year.
yeah. And it gives you huge peace of mind. And that way you don't run out of runway for something important that you know you need to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a yeah. So there were. I was one of my favorite books is 4,000 Weeks, which is like a time planning book. But the assumption is if you live to 70 something years old, you'll live 4,000 weeks. And that's not a lot of weeks. So yeah,
Yeah, no.
time is of the essence to both do estate planning and also to live your life. So and have fun with people should have fun with that both those processes.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you for all of the insight that you brought to us today. This has been very informative.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And that's it for today's conversation. To connect with Stephen or to learn more about estate and family law in Georgia, head to scriberlaw.com. If you found this helpful, take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with someone who could use this clear, trustworthy legal guidance.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.